Welcome back. You're joining us here at the head of Carlson Inlet, an infrequently cruised waterway tucked away in the northern reaches of British Columbia.
Dean Channel is supposed to be incredible.
Anchoring can be a real challenge out here.
We've been told that you can anchor up there. The mountains start to get pretty big, so we're looking at 7,000-foot mountains.
The deep, glacial carved fjords continue straight to the ocean floor, leaving little space to plant a hook. The anxiety is real.
That's definitely the anxiety we're having, is how are we going to anchor once we get to the head of this inlet?
There's nothing on navionics on the charts to suggest that you should anchor here and that it's safe, there's good holding, you're protected from the wind. So it's a little bit of like an exploratory kind of anchoring situation. Subscribe and welcome to our adventure. Overnight, we dropped our crab trap with our salmon carcass in it from last night, and we've been blessed with two beautiful, healthy, gorgeous, legal-sized male Dungeness. Like 6 3/4, nearly 7, which is fabulous because now we have more protein than we know what to do with and absolutely no way to keep it cold. We're going to shake them out of the trap here, dispatch of them, and we'll probably boil them up straight away and then stick them into the ice box to keep them cool.
Ooh.
Definitely a male. So here we are, having a nice little crab lunch, just in case we got to get out of here in a hurry and we don't have time to eat. Nothing better than fresh crab. Beautiful. This afternoon, the inflow winds have picked up a little bit, which is pretty typical of afternoons in the inlets in the summer. The notes that we have on this anchorage from a cruising guide that's pretty old say that the inflow and outflow winds don't blow in here. We can say that that is incorrect because it's blowing an inflow wind in here and we're getting some pretty significant gusts. It's really interesting in this anchorage particular because we anchored in 100 feet, which is very deep. We have our anchor, 30 feet of chain, and the rest is rope. And we have out 180 feet of road, which technically is less than 2 to 1. That conventionally doesn't really make that much sense. But because here at the head of the inlet, we're dug into an incredibly steep upslope, so down at the bottom is 100 feet. And then the stern of the boat is sitting at about the 55-foot contour, and then it shelves very rapidly behind us. So in actuality, instead of having our anchor dug into a flat surface, we're dug into a surface that's more like this. So as we pull back on the anchor, you're flattening the anchor rod down against the seafloor and then pulling almost horizontally on the anchor rather than lifting the fluke and dislodging it, which is what causes most people to rip their anchor out of the ground or drag. We don't really know the condition of the bottom down there. I walked the tidal flat this morning and it seems to be a mixture of coarse sand, a little bit of gravel and mud, which should be fairly decent holding, really. Like, it's pretty dense stuff. I would trust it. So throughout the building wind over the last hour, we've been keeping an eye on our depth sounder to make sure that we're sitting on the same contour. We've noticed that the boat will pull back on the road. It'll stretch it out quite considerably and then spring forward. Al's been sitting up at the front, holding the road and feeling for it to drag during some of the gusts, and she's pretty confident that the anchor isn't dragging and that it's set really well, and I trust her 100% on that because she does that every single day. We've got the tracker going on navionics at the moment, so you can see our swing lines, you can see when we stretch, we can see when we spring forward, and that's all just information that we can use to actually help us ascertain whether we're dragging or not, as well as the physical sensations, the trusting your eyes, looking at the lines between the boat and the shore, feeling the anchor rod, and checking all that kind of stuff out as well. if we were to start dragging in this situation, immediately we're still tied off by our stern line, so we would just let our float line go. We turn the engine on immediately and then motor forward up on the road, pull the hook and go out and sail the boat. We're prepared for that. We've got the boat ready. We've got the engine controls turned on. They're ready to rock and roll. Got the sail covers off, the jib sheets ready to go. There isn't a whole lot of literature when it comes to anchoring in deep fjordal places, and you're really kind of just like almost forging new ground when it comes to doing this stuff, and it really makes you feel really alert when conditions are changing. There's a lot of anxiety involved with it. There's a lot of unknowns. So we just wanted to make it pretty clear that it's not all like flat, calm, turquoise waters and hot springs and beautiful afternoons. It can get pretty spicy. That's a good gust right now. Holy.
I know, I'm not even looking at you. I'm looking to see if we're dragging.
Totally right. Wow. Well, there's the wind. The wind is back. So it's probably time to get going and seeing where we end up today.
Currently motoring out of Carlson Inlet. The wind started to pick up and is blowing out of the southeast and is funneling straight into our anchorage here.
So as we're coming out here, it does appear that the southeasterly is blowing straight up Dean Channel and then funneling around the southern bluff here on the entrance to Carlson Inlet, which gives me the impression that there's actually less wind in the head of Carlson Inlet than there is out here in the channel. You can see whitecaps developed fairly well throughout the entirety of the channel going north, and then there's low hanging dark clouds that look like they're bringing in rain.
We've got a beautiful breeze pushing us downwind at an average of 6 knots. Actually, right now we're 6.5. I'm not even really paying attention, so I should be. 6.5 knots in the direction we want to go. Although the sky's looking a little bit ominous, it's pretty calm. The seas are tame. It might rain, but otherwise it's absolutely beautiful sailing. Dean Channel is supposed to be incredible. So as we continue north up to the head of the inlet, the mountains start to get pretty big. So we're looking at 7,000 foot mountains. Once we get up there, there's also supposed to be tons of grizzly bears, and the salmon are running up the rivers right now, so we should expect to see some bears. We've been told that you can anchor up there, It might be similar to what we did up in Butte Inlet last summer. We're also told that we can maybe potentially tie off to a mooring or some sort of floating dock up at Kinsipit. So we'll see what happens. But that's definitely the anxiety we're having is how are we going to anchor once we get to the head of this inlet?
I've been feeling very anxious all day. I think it's a lot to do with the unknowns of coming up into these places, which is probably why a lot of people choose not to do it. So we're getting really meta now. It's going to be me filming me, being filmed by Allison filming me, while I sit here and talk to you about my anxiety. I guess the problem with coming up an inlet and not knowing where to anchor, for us at least, is if we can't anchor up there, we can't get the anchor to set somewhere, then we don't really have any other options apart from turning back around and coming back out the way we came. And when you're looking at 20 miles to the next place or 30 miles to the next place that is anchorable, that's a lot of sailing to do upwind. And because we don't have an autopilot on our boat, that's a lot of man hours behind the wheel. So if we get up there and we can't make it work, then we're looking at beating it out of an inlet until we get somewhere where we can anchor, and that's not probably going to be until the wee hours of the morning, and we'll be exhausted and tired and really frustrated, and it's an outcome that we just really don't want to have happen. And I guess that's the basis of the fear, not really know if anchoring is really possible, or if the weather's going to get worse, or if we're going to get up there and it's just going to be super exposed and uncomfortable. And I guess that's the risk that we're taking in coming up here. A lot of decisions and worries and anxieties that have been running around in my head and making me feel uneasy about venturing up here today.
Over 100 kilometers long, Dean Channel is one of the largest inlets in British Columbia, Canada. It's a long voyage inland and off the beaten path from the standard cruising route, so there isn't a lot of information about what to expect around these parts. The inlet is ironbound, a term used by early mariners to describe the rocky cliffs that plunge thousands of feet into the ocean. There aren't a lot of places to anchor and take refuge, and the wind can really rip through here, especially those notorious katabatic winds. cool, dense air that rushed down from mountainsides, clocking in at hurricane force. For these reasons, the anxiety is real, and it's why not a lot of folks make the journey. But sailing up here is an opportunity to witness some of the most stunning scenery on this coast. Like any adventure, you do your best to be prepared and minimize the risks, and try not to worry too much about the rest. We just seen another boat go by. It was a tugboat coming out of Kimsquit. We think it was nice to see another boat because we hadn't seen one for a couple of days. We just furled in the head sail because we were experiencing a lot of weather helm. And now we're just surfing down waves with 2 reefs in the main, going 4.5 knots, 5 knots.
We're just arriving here at the Dean River, which is off to starboard here. We're having wind now funnel over the tops of these mountains, which means that we're arriving on a beam reach, which is quite nice. The sea state is very calm and mellow up here in the upper reaches of Dean Channel, which I was a little surprised about. I was expecting the swell to carry all the way up here from the wind that is raging further down the reach. We couldn't see it at the time, but I'm guessing that a lot of those spicy patches of wind were probably caused by the massive mountains and hanging glaciers that we couldn't see through the cloud cover, which are now clearly visible behind us. It was a pretty lovely sail. We made it up here in like 4 hours, which is pretty fast for us. The valley in front of us looks absolutely spectacular. There's rugged mountains, glaciers, in more or less every direction. We're just going to come around the corner here, stick our nose into the bay here, do some scouting around and see if we can't find anywhere to drop the anchor. The delta here of the river should provide the majority of protection from any chop or swell coming up the inlet. It's got quite a shallow, not shallow, it's super deep here. It's got quite a low-laying bank that's been extended out the front of it from, I'm guessing, years and years and years of debris and soil being washed downstream.
This is the Dean River, one of the few rivers to fully penetrate the wall of the coast mountains, stretching from Vancouver to Alaska, providing a corridor for grizzly bears to travel from the interior to the coast for fish. But bears aren't the only ones fishing here. Known as one of the best fishing grounds for steelhead and Chinook salmon on this coast, there are a handful of very high-end fishing resorts here. This abundant watershed weaves its way through massive mountains to empty here at the headwaters of Dean Channel and the indigenous village site of Kimsquit, the original settlement of the Nuak people. This area is really remote, so the only way to arrive here is by boat or plane. But this place doesn't see a lot of sailboats, and there's no mention of anchoring up here in cruising guides. We scouted the area for a while before finding a spot that could potentially be anchorable.
We're anchored here up in the north reach of Dean Channel. We're here just on the leeward side of a little creek. Bit of a spicy sail getting up here. We eventually doused the head sail and just rode on the second reef on the main for the last 7 nautical miles. There's no information about anchoring up here, like, period. There's nothing on Navionics. There's nothing I found in the cruising guides that we have on board. So it really is kind of just like local knowledge. We popped over to the fishing resort over here on the kind of like the lee side of the delta of the Dean River and had a chat with some of the caretakers over there. They were really helpful. They were awesome. They told us a few things about, you know, what's going on up here. There's a couple of anchorages down, well, there's one anchorage down towards the head of the Kimsquit River, and we're here at the other place that people anchor, which is Manitou Creek. Kind of the same thing as Carlson Inlet, really. Like, the creek comes out and it forms a big silty shelf that then drops down into the inlet. So just out a couple 100 feet in front of us, it's like 400 feet deep. Dropped to about 80 feet and then stern tide to shore, and at low tide, fingers crossed we don't touch. But it's going to be tight because under the keel we have like 20 feet at high tide, so at low tide that should be like 5 feet. So I'm hoping with the swing that there's no obstacles that's going to bump the rudder or anything like that. There's nothing on Navionics on the charts to suggest that you should anchor here and that it's safe, there's good holding, you're protected from the wind that's predominant in early August at the moment, which is just inflow winds. So it's a little bit of like an exploratory kind of anchoring situation. A little stressful. We're only out at 2 to 1 stern tide on a steep up-facing silt bed. We're out of the lee of the wind at the moment, which is really nice. The boat's just gently rocking in the residual swell as it comes around, but you get the occasional little gust come through and you can see up in the tops of the trees that the trees have wind up there, but it's pretty calm in here, which is pretty awesome. So yeah, we're just gonna ride it out here for the night, see how it goes, and see what tomorrow brings. This is like the second time in 2 days that I've tried this really steep upslope stern tying thing on a low scope. So I've been really interested in exploring like alternative anchoring techniques. We did the fisherman's mooring thing last year up in Butte, which I found like to be a really cool experience, and it seems to be working really well. I'd be really curious to hear if anybody else has experience anchoring like this. Tell us about your alternative anchoring techniques. Like, do you try them? Do you get out of the regular gunk holes that are just easy to set the hook? I know that a lot of people go there because we go there and there's tons of people, but then we come out to these more remote locations where the anchoring is much more challenging and we see absolutely nobody for like weeks, which is awesome. But like, are people worried about trying these things? Are you concerned about whether they work and you just don't want to like try them? Have you had bad experiences in the past trying them? Yeah, let us know. We'd really love to connect and chat about it, and I think there's a whole discussion in there that we could all learn and benefit from and have a great little dialogue about.